Has our neighborly feud permanently settled down? We have an exclusive interview with the new U.S. ambassador to Canada. From the American Embassy, I'm Mercedes Stevenson. A special edition of the West Block starts now.
We don't need them for anything.
From verbal spars on both sides between President Trump and our former prime minister to a full-on tariff war. It's been a rough ride for North-South relations these past few months, but are we finally turning the corner for good? And what does the U.S. now expect from Canada as far as defense and security? From NATO to NORAD, will the U.S. impose a new price of admission? The Canada-U.S. partnership has been one of the closest of any two countries in the world for decades. In the 60s, JFK delivered this memorable phrase on Parliament Hill.
Geography has made us neighbors. History has made us friends. Economics has made us partners. And necessity has made us allies.
In the 80s, Ronald Reagan hosted our prime minister with this toast.
When at times we spar, we do so without rancor and we work out our differences. May this very special and productive spirit of cooperation remain in place.
And as with many close relationships, that cooperation has been put to the test.
What I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state.
There's not a snowball's chance in hell that Canada will ever be the 51st state.
So when our newly minted prime minister left for the White House last week, the pressure to alleviate that cross-border tension couldn't have been higher. And most Canadians breathed a collective sigh of relief when they heard words like this come from the Oval Office.
It's a great honor to have Prime Minister Mark Carney with us. I think Canada chose a very talented person, a very good person, because we spoke before the election quite a few times. And it's an honor to have you at the White House and the Oval Office.
You're a transformational president. We're stronger when we work together, and there's many opportunities to work together, and I look forward to, addressing some of those issues that we have, but also finding those areas of mutual cooperation so we can move forward.
Ambassador Hoekstra, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Welcome to Canada.
We love it so far. I mean, we've been to Canada often, but in the week and a half that Diane and I have been here, we've had a very, very warm welcome. We're very appreciative of that, and we've had an exciting time. In the Netherlands, it took me almost a year before I helped arrange a meeting between the Prime Minister and the President. And here it's like, 1 week. Okay, mission accomplished. Check that one off the list. So
I think you set a record there.
A lot of exciting stuff happening.
Well, a special time, too, of course, for Holland and Canada because of the liberation of Holland, Canada and the U.S. as we turn this new page in our relationship. One of the things that you've been messaging and the president has been messaging is that you're ready to move forward with the relationship and to turn over a new leaf after what were some fairly rough times in the friendship between President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau. What message has the president given you to bring here to Canada about the kind of relationship he wants?
I think the president wants a very positive relationship. I thought we saw that in the meeting on Tuesday. The president talked about, I love Canada. Okay, I have friends on both sides of the border. I have friends in Canada. I would love to have Canada be a part of the United States, but it takes two to tango. We don't extend that offer very often. We don't extend that offer to many folks. The president obviously is very, very fond of Canada. We have moved beyond the 51st state, at least as far as I'm concerned. The president can bring it up, but it's clear. If that discussion ever comes up again, it'll be between the president and the prime minister. Okay? And they will deal with it just like they dealt with it on Tuesday. They both expressed their views, eloquently, forcefully, and okay, let's move on. We got to do a trade agreement. We want to make America, Canada, we want to make America more prosperous, want to make it more safe, we want to make it more secure. The same kinds of things I think that the Prime Minister wants for Canada.
So I have to ask you then, to put it on the record, as it were, we've moved past the 51st state, which I know a lot of Americans saw as an expression of fondness, but Canadians did not. They were hurt by it. They saw it as disrespect for our sovereignty. Does America respect Canada's sovereignty, and there is no chance you're going to try to make us the 51st state through economic or military means?
Yeah, we were very disappointed of the reaction by the Canadians. For some of us, we took it, well, they really don't like America if they don't even,
Well, we love America. We just don't want to be part of America.
I'm just kind of kidding on that, okay? The president and I think the prime minister, dealt with that issue on Tuesday. They both expressed their views. They did it seriously. They listened to each other. And you know what? They also threw in a little bit of humor, which tells me that, okay, this is not a stumbling block to our relationship. There's so much that we need to accomplish and we can accomplish together. That is the focus of both of these leaders, and that's where they want to go.
You were in the meetings that we don't get to see. We get to see,
yes,
it, as it were, the Oval Office show, but we don't get to see behind it. What were those discussions like over lunch?
Very respectful. There's 14 potted plants around the table. Those of us that get to be in the room, but we don't say much. But we get a great lunch at the White House, and we can say we had lunch with the president and the prime minister. But the president and the prime minister do the majority of the talking. So they talked. I think both of them listened to what the other had to say. They showed a high level of respect. They, I think, established a personal bond, which is important for these kinds of individuals and for the people that are in these offices, that they have that personal bond. They talked about serious issues. They talked about national security. They talked about fentanyl. They talked about the Arctic. They talked about China. These are all things that basically we have worked together on for decades. And it was forward-looking. It wasn't, dwelling back and saying, well, you disappointed us here, or, and those types of things. It's like, these are challenges that both of our countries face. How can we work together to make us more prosperous, to make us more safe? How do we get to a fentanyl? I don't think these are words that they use, but these are words that I use. How do we get to a point where we are a fentanyl-free North American continent? We are losing way too many Canadians each and every day to fentanyl. We are losing way too many Americans to fentanyl each and every day. And neither one of our leaders wants to lose one more Canadian or one more fentanyl. We'd love to get to 0 deaths per day. That's the kind of objective.
Well, and you mentioned China, and a lot of both the fentanyl and the precursors for fentanyl come from China. I want to bring up tariffs in that context, because Canadians are very anxious to have tariffs lifted. They're terrible for our economy. They're terrible for our jobs. They have a lot of anxiety created up here because we feel, and we have been grouped with countries like Mexico, which we don't present equal risk to the United States from. We do have this special relationship. I know the president and the prime minister said that was a discussion for another day, but have you been told what the benchmark or the criteria would be to have those tariffs removed?
I'm not sure they'll be totally removed. I mean, we saw this week, we saw that another country that believes they have a special relationship with the United States, the UK and Canada, or UK and America, we announced a trade agreement this week. In some ways, it's kind of a framework, an example of where we will be moving in the future. But we got that done in a little over 100 days with the UK. Now that there's a government in Canada, hopefully we will get to an agreement relatively quickly. But there's some tough issues to negotiate and to talk about. But I think both leaders want to get this behind us, and again, focus on creating a framework that will build and bring prosperity to both countries. And we're not exactly sure what the final agreement may look like.
So should we interpret that as the tariffs are potentially connected to a new trade agreement more than necessarily, for example, the fentanyl crossing the border?
Oh, yeah, I think it's, the president has made very, very clear. The USMCA, as we call it, was successful for the last 4 or 5 years. It was designed to be transitional. Also transitional, recognizing that, you know, the economy, technologies, lots of things change. We learn about what's working and what's not, but that it would be, you know, modified within 4, 5, 6 years. So discussions would begin on what needs to change, and those discussions, I think, will now take place. They may take place in some of the issues that, you know, the president has raised initially, but also that we will go back and take a look at USMCA, but with the context of creating an agreement that, again, brings prosperity and brings stability to the relationship.
So what do you think that agreement might look like? Because people say, well, we have this agreement, we have the framework. Obviously, both countries have now agreed. It needs to change. What are the thoughts on how that needs to change? And I'm curious if any of it includes security in those changes.
Well, I think the president looks at these relationships in a very broad context. Sure, it's tariffs and, you know, what markets are open, which ones are closed, where we have non-tariff trade barriers, you know, maybe from either country, where we have government subsidies and those types of things. The president will take a holistic approach, yes, and he will deal with things, okay, are we working together on some issues that, or opportunity areas that are very important to us. The fentanyl is one. A second one would be defense, national security, global security. You know, NATO has been very important to the president. When I was in the Netherlands, you know, we were at a position where the Dutch were significantly underfunding NATO. They weren't anywhere close to 2%. And the president, you know, has made clear consistently that there's an obligation for the members of NATO to meet the commitment that they made in 2014. This is not imposed on them by Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump going to his allies, our allies and our partners, and saying, you said you were going to spend 2%, and you're not meeting it. And that was a key priority for the president back then, and it's still a key priority to the president because, you know, he's dealing with issues now because countries didn't, and NATO didn't invest. Firmly believe he's now having to resolve and trying to resolve a conflict between Russia and Ukraine that I think, you know, he says this would not have happened if NATO had invested and NATO had been prepared, because Russia wouldn't have, and NATO had been strong.